The Nighttime Train. Introduction. The move was supposed to be a fresh start. After years of struggling to make ends meet in a two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, Lisa finally passed her nursing boards and landed a job with the largest healthcare system in the Northeast. It wasn't glamorous, but it came with benefits, a steady paycheck, and a quiet town where her kids could grow up a little safer. Her husband Marcus still commuted to the city as a corporate lawyer, but they all agreed it was time for something different. The house came from an inheritance, from a great aunt named Evelyn, who had lived alone for decades. They'd only met her once at a family reunion when Dawn was still in diapers, and even then, she'd mostly sat quietly, scribbling in a worn leather journal. Gone now and suddenly generous, she had left the house to Lisa with a note that simply read, "You'll need the quiet. The tracks still remember." It was old, but it had space. Trees, a backyard, room to breathe, room to begin again. And in the attic, tucked beside a dusty cedar chest, Lisa found the journal. Most of it was mundane. Grocery lists, weather notes, musings on plants and birds. But toward the back, one entry stood out. The train returned last night, glowing as ever, silent as always. It comes when something is needed. Never too early, never too late. But for Dawn and Trey, that didn't make the move easier. Back in Brooklyn, their relationship had been a mix of teasing and territory wars, sharing a room, a bathroom, and the ever-shrinking line between childhood and adolescence. Dawn was the little sister who always asked too many questions. Trey was the big brother who always acted like he knew everything. They loved each other, sure, but space was tight and tempers ran short. Since the move, though, something had shifted. With their mom working long hours at her dream job and their dad gone most of the day, they had started leaning on each other more. It wasn't perfect, but in the quiet, in the strange stillness of Hackensack, they'd found a kind of alliance. They kept each other company, shared inside jokes, made dinner when mom worked doubles. Dawn started noticing when Trey looked sad. Trey started waiting for Dawn when school let out. The distance from everything they knew had somehow brought them closer to each other. They missed their friends, the noise, the color, the life of the city. Hackensack felt like a soft hush after a long, beautiful song, and they weren't ready for the silence. Then, one night, just beyond the fence line and down a stretch of forgotten tracks, something shimmered. A train, glowing, silent, unmapped, impossible, and everything began to change. Chapter 1. New Tracks. Dawn didn't like the new house. She didn't hate it. Hate was too big a word, and Mom said to use big words carefully. But she didn't like how quiet it was, or how dark it got at night, or how the trees seemed to whisper when the wind blew just right. In Brooklyn, there were always lights, always sounds. A siren in the distance, someone yelling about pizza, cars honking at 3 a.m. The noise had been a lullaby. Here in Hackensack, it felt like the world had turned the volume all the way down. Trey said it was fine. He was 14 and pretending not to care, but he stared out the window a lot. And when he thought no one was looking, he scrolled through photos on his phone, mostly of their old apartment, their school, his best friend, Malik. Lisa, their mom, was doing her best. She smiled with her whole face when she walked in the door after work, even though her scrubs were wrinkled and her feet hurt. She'd passed the nursing exam, gotten the job, and now she worked long shifts at the biggest hospital in town. A fresh start, she called it. A blessing. Their dad, Marcus, still worked in the city. He left before sunrise and got back late, sometimes not until after bedtime. His voice came through the front door with the clink of keys and the scent of his travel mug coffee. He always kissed their foreheads goodnight. Even Trey, though Trey pretended to be asleep. The house sat near the edge of town, tucked between tall pines and narrow streets that curled like lazy question marks. Behind the backyard fence were train tracks. They hadn't noticed them when they moved in. But the first night, Dawn had heard something. A whistle, software far off. She pressed her face to the window, but all she saw was dark trees and the stretch of steel that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. She didn't mention it the next day, but the second night she heard it again. This time she woke Trey. 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 The train. He groaned. What train? There's a train. Outside. It's probably just freight or something. It glowed. He opened one eye. It what? It glowed, she said again, whispering now. Like silver, but quiet. He sat up. Together they crept to the living room window and peeked through the curtains. The yard was empty. The trees were still. And then, just beyond the trees, a shape moved. It shimmered, like moonlight caught in motion. It didn't make a sound, not the hum of an engine or the click of wheels. It simply passed, almost dreamlike, before disappearing into the shadows. Dawn didn't speak. She just watched. Trey whispered, "That's not normal." "No," Dawn agreed. "It's not." She felt something cold and curious in her chest, like the start of a story, and somehow she knew that whatever the train was, it wasn't finished with them yet. Chapter 2. The Train That Shouldn't Be. They saw it again the next night. This time Trey was the one who noticed. He had been sitting on the edge of his bed, earbuds in, pretending not to care about anything, when the faint whistle floated in. Soft, almost like a sigh. "Dawn," he whispered, already halfway out of his room. She was awake. Of course she was. Ever since that first night, she'd been listening. They didn't say much, just grabbed blankets and tiptoed to the living room window like kids sneaking into a secret. And there it was, the train, gliding by, quiet as a dream. But this time, they noticed something new. Shapes. People. Silhouettes stood inside the glowing cars. Men in old-fashioned coats, women in long skirts, children holding hands. A boy with a kite tucked under one arm. No one looked at them, but they weren't shadows. They were real. Just not from now. "Are we dreaming?" Dawn asked. Trey shook his head slowly. "I don't think so." They watched the last car pass. It disappeared into the trees like it had never been there at all. The next morning, Dawn told their mom. Lisa chuckled softly. "That track hasn't been used in decades, baby. They built the new line east of town. I think you two are just adjusting. Dreams get weird when everything's changing." But that night it came again. This time, it didn't pass right away. It lingered. The lights inside shimmered softly. One of the doors opened with a hush of mist. Dawn held her breath. No one stepped out. Instead, something small landed in the grass by the fence. The train pulled away. In the morning light, they found it. A coin, or maybe a token. It was round and silver, warm to the touch. Etched across the surface, faintly, almost like a whisper, was a name. Dawn. And suddenly Trey wasn't so sure it was just her imagination anymore. "Okay," he said, looking over his shoulder toward the trees. This is officially weird. But part of him was already wondering, would there be one for him? Chapter 3. Tickets and Whispers. Trey got his token 2 nights later. It had rained that day, and the grass behind the fence was still damp. He spotted the silver disc near the edge of the tracks, half buried in mud. He wiped it clean with his sleeve. Trey. That night, the train came earlier, just after midnight. Dawn and Trey sat side by side on the floor in front of the window, wrapped in blankets. They didn't talk. They just waited. The whistle was softer this time, almost like it was calling them by name. Trey's dream came first. He was standing on the train, watching buildings fly past. But they weren't just any buildings. They were his middle school, the corner store in Brooklyn with the best dollar pizza, the bodega cat that always napped on the chip shelf. But then the scenery shifted. Trees, a soccer field, the park in Hackensack he hadn't dared walk through yet. And in the window's reflection, he saw himself, not lonely or unsure, but smiling, confident, like he belonged. Dawn dreamed too. She was in the last car of the train, sitting next to her old best friend from Brooklyn. They were laughing, drawing doodles in the fog on the window. Then her friend whispered, "You don't have to forget me, but you can make room." The next morning, Dawn found a note folded on her nightstand in neat, tidy print. "You're still you, wherever you go." Chapter 4. What We Carry With Us. Lisa noticed the difference first. Her kids weren't fighting as much. They still didn't love Hackensack, but something had softened around them. They listened more, talked more, drew pictures, wrote notes. Something was shifting. One evening, she found Trey asleep on the couch with a blanket pulled over his head and his shoes still on. She sat next to him quietly. "I miss it too, you know," she said softly. "But I'm trying. And you're allowed to miss it. And try at the same time." Trey stirred but didn't open his eyes. "Is that what grown-ups do?" Lisa smiled. "The good ones." Later that night, Lisa stayed up past midnight, folding laundry. She passed by the window just as the train glided silently by. She didn't call for the kids. She didn't blink. And in the morning, there was a folded note tucked near the coffee maker. "You're doing better than you think." She stared at it for a long moment, then tucked it into her wallet. Chapter 5. Riding the Line. It was a Saturday when Marcus was finally home for dinner. The kids told him everything: the glowing train, the tokens, the notes. He listened, one eyebrow raised, a lawyer's skepticism stamped on his face. "That's not possible," he said. "No trains run on that track since the early 2000s. "Then what's the light we see?" Dawn asked. "What's the coin with my name?" Trey added. Marcus didn't have an answer. But that night, just to humor them, he stayed up too. And when the train appeared, gliding like starlight on invisible rails, he didn't speak. He didn't move. He just watched. The four of them sat at the window, wrapped in quiet wonder. And for the first time in months, they felt like a family again. That night, Marcus dreamed of riding the train too. In his dream, he was holding Lisa's hand. The kids were laughing, and the skyline of Brooklyn shimmered behind a curtain of trees. When he woke up, he kissed Lisa's forehead and said, "I think I'm ready to start looking for work closer to home." Chapter 6. Something Like Belonging. Life didn't magically fix itself, but it changed. Dawn made a friend at the park after sketching the train in chalk on the sidewalk. Her name was Lena, and she liked comics and loud socks. Trey joined the school's music club, surprising even himself. Lisa was nominated for a Nurse Appreciation Award. Marcus applied to 3 firms in Jersey, and the train still came. Not every night, but often enough. They didn't always wait for it now. Sometimes, it was just there in the background, like a quiet promise, a whisper in motion. Chapter 7. The Quiet Between Them. Before the move, Lisa and Marcus had fallen into a rhythm that worked, but barely. Long commutes, tired evenings, bills that always arrived too soon. They loved each other, but love was often buried beneath responsibilities and schedules. In Brooklyn, they passed like ships in the night, her studying for nursing boards, him prepping court briefs into the early hours. But something shifted in Hackensack. Maybe it was the slower pace. Maybe it was the quiet. Maybe it was watching Dawn and Trey pull closer together that reminded them of what they used to be. Lisa began to leave little notes in Marcus's briefcase. Marcus started making breakfast on his days off. They fought less, talked more. And one evening, while sorting through a new stack of Evelyn's old journals, Lisa shared something that caught her breath. It was a letter, never mailed, written in neat cursive on yellowing paper. To the next mother of this house, the train will come. It always does when things are trying to mend. Don't fear the quiet. It holds space for healing. And let your partner see the parts of you that are tired. The tracks can't carry you both if you're always pretending to be fine. Lisa read it aloud. Marcus didn't speak for a long while, but when he finally looked up, his eyes were soft. "Let's stop pretending we're fine," he said. "Let's actually be fine." And something in the air around them relaxed. A closeness returned. Chapter 8. The Track Between Us. They began taking walks again. It had been years since they strolled just to talk, just to be. Some nights after dinner and before the dishes, they'd step outside, hands brushing together, sometimes clasped, sometimes not. Marcus started asking questions about Evelyn. Lisa showed him the old family photos, the pressed flowers tucked in the journal, the sketches of the train that looked just like what the children had described. Together they pieced together a small history, one filled with quiet wonder and half-remembered stories. The mystery no longer frightened them. It grounded them. Marcus even started keeping a journal of his own. He claimed it was for notes and case ideas, but Lisa once saw a sketch of their house with silver tracks glowing just behind it. They were becoming better parents because of it. Not because they had all the answers, but because they were finally showing up with their full selves. Vulnerable. Present. The train hadn't changed who they were, but it had helped them remember. Epilogue. The last train for now. Years passed. Trey was now in his second year at a university upstate, studying computer engineering. Dawn, a high school senior with a sketchbook always at her side, had just submitted her college applications. One crisp December afternoon, they both came home for winter break. Dawn first, then Trey the next day, lugging his duffel and laptop bag through the front door like he'd never left. The hugs were tight, the laughter loud. The house felt full again. Lisa made hot cocoa from scratch. Marcus grilled in the cold just because he could. The kitchen buzzed with stories and teasing, and the kind of easy rhythm that comes when people know each other by heart. Later that night, Dawn and Trey sat on the porch, bundled up, watching their breath curl into the night air. "You still think about the train?" Dawn asked. Trey nodded. "Sometimes I dream about it. Not like before, not glowing or anything. Just there. Like it's watching. Like it knows we're okay now." Dawn smiled. "Yeah, I don't wait for it anymore. But I still listen." He nudged her shoulder. "Me too." Inside, Lisa tucked a fresh clipping from Evelyn's journal into a frame above the mantel. It was an old entry, one she hadn't noticed until recently. "When the children return stronger, the track sleeps. When they forget the way, it wakes again." Outside, no train came that night. No whistle, no shimmer. Just the quiet, but not the lonely kind, the peaceful kind. And if someone had walked past their house just before midnight, they might have sworn they heard the softest sigh of steam, the briefest glint of silver across the tracks. Still out there, still waiting, just in case it's ever needed again.